I don't know when it was, I'm going to guess February, that I saw a news story as the vaccine was just coming around that said, if we do our best and if this vaccination procedure works as well as we hope it'll work and are trying to plan for it to work, we might be back to somewhat normal by the 4th of July. And I thought, it was at that point in the pandemic where I thought, I can't picture it. How are we going to get there? And here we are on the 4th of July with a packed church. I think it's really beautiful for us to have the readings that we have this week. And I think it's important for us to recognize how God's providence is at work here. Because, as you know, the readings that we hear at Mass are worldwide readings. These readings were selected generations ago for every Catholic in the world to hear today. But only a small minority of those Catholics are here in the United States, and it just happens to be our Independence Day. So I just want to give thanks to God that our readings are really all about the topic of freedom on our Independence Day. It's almost like these readings are a little mini retreat for us on freedom. And so I wanted to share with you something that I didn't learn until I went to the seminary, but you may have heard in a philosophy class or some other class that you might have taken along the way. But it's about the two sides of freedom, what philosophers call negative freedom and positive freedom. The negative and the positive don't mean good and bad, not at all. It's just the two different sides that define two ways of being free. One of them is freedom from whatever you don't want in your life. And the other is freedom for whatever is necessary in life. Freedom from and freedom for. So I thought it would be valuable to hear how we hear about that in the readings today, especially in light of what we as a people are celebrating this weekend. The first one is freedom from. Freedom from is that sense that you can't make me do something I don't wish to do. You can't force me. And so we hear this quite often. It kind of is summed up in the phrase, it's a free country. And because it's a free country, you can't force me to join your religion. You can't tell me what to do on my property. This is the source of where we had all that tension this past year about mask wearing. You can't tell me what to put on my face or my body. That's that sense of freedom. You can't make me. It's a free country. And that's a valid side of freedom. But the other side is one that we think of less, and it's what the readings are about today. Freedom for. It's summed up by the phrase, I answer to God. God is who I answer to. So freedom for is that availability we have to do whatever it is God has planned for us, whether other people like it or not. I can become whatever God calls me to be. I can displease others, as uncomfortable as that might be, as long as I'm pleasing God. I am free to do whatever God reveals to me in privacy. I can do whatever that is part of God's call for my life. So you hear the two sides of freedom. You can't make me do that. It's a free country. And I am free to do whatever I need to because I answer to God. The second of those two is the one that Jesus and the readings are talking about today. And it starts right from the very beginning. Ezekiel is being sent to Israel. And God is giving Ezekiel a briefing on what he's going to find when he gets there. Now, interestingly, in the scriptures, whenever you hear Israel, that means us. That's us. That's our family. That's our ancestors. That's like saying, I'm going to send you to the Vanderveers or the Polverellis. It's us. Okay, so here's what God says. Okay, Ezekiel, I'm sending you on a mission, but get ready, because these people are pieces of work. You haven't seen a people this stubborn in a long time. This is going to be a hard mission. And then God says this, but remember, you answer to me. You don't answer to them. As long as you're doing what I'm asking you to do, don't worry if they're in favor of it or not. It's not about that. It's about you and me. And I want you to go to them. Because as difficult and as stiff-necked as they are, I love them. And I have a mission for you with them. Jesus takes it a step further, helps us to know even more in the gospel, because he's the one who goes to his hometown and preaches. He walks into a synagogue, which I could imagine is as packed as this one is today, and he preached on the readings. And people lost their minds with excitement over how wise he was. Listen to this guy. He's really good. What an amazing preacher. But all of a sudden, who knows what happened that turned the tide? Was it just one curmudgeon? Or was it a pack of mean kids that got in there and started whispering and saying, well, who does he think he is anyway? I mean, why should we listen to some kid down the street who all of a sudden's got a soapbox and a thing to say? We don't want to hear this. Why should we listen to him? And Jesus' response to that was remarkable. He said, take it or leave it. I answer to God. I am here to offer you the most loving, the most enlightened, the most luminous message you can imagine. And if you don't like it, you can take it up with God. I don't answer to you. In fact, we're going to hear in the continuation of this next week that famous phrase of what he offers us whenever people are disapproving of us. He says, shake the dust. Just shake the dust from your sandals. Don't worry about that. You don't answer to them. You answer to God. What Jesus is introducing us to is the most basic level of freedom that most of us struggle with. Whether you live in the United States with all of our rights and privileges and responsibilities, or whether you live somewhere where there's oppression, all of us are called to the kind of freedom Jesus talks about today. How attached are you to other people's approval? Are you like me? Does that matter way too much to you? That's a struggle of mine. I really like people to approve of me. I really like people to agree with what I say and think that I'm a good person, but I have no control over that. How are you with people's approval? Is that something that you are really clamoring for? Have you ever taken a step back from your life and asked yourself, what has anyone's approval ever really done for me? What has people's approval really given me? If you step back and you think about it, approval is a lot like a sugar high. It feels good, but what does it give you? What do you do then when the next person doesn't approve? All of us who have a sugar high know what comes after that. A crash. Right after the high is the crash. Approval is the exact same way, and that's why Jesus will not ride that roller coaster. Take it or leave it. I answer to God. There's an author, a priest from France, who wrote a book that I took on retreat one time, and he changed the way I thought about freedom completely. He said, freedom is not being a slave to anything, even your own moods, even what you want on a particular day. He said, freedom is being guided and making fundamental decisions in accordance with that guidance and not abandoning it because something got in the way. You're free to not abandon what you most want because there's an obstacle in the way, or because your mood changed, or because the direction of the wind changed. Freedom is, I answer to God. I don't change my mind about that when things get hard or when it doesn't feel good. As you can imagine, I've been doing a lot of reflecting on this kind of freedom in the past couple of weeks, because I was the one who went and made a promise of obedience to the bishop in front of a cathedral filled with my friends and relatives. I decided to call them all together, and I promised that I would do whatever I was asked to do. And I did it of sound mind and pure heart. I was clear-headed. I mean, I knew when I was 18 that I was born to do this. But I didn't have the courage, so I ran from it for 20 years. And then finally, after 20 years of not being a priest, I realized I couldn't do that, and so I became a priest. And I made a promise that felt really good at the time when I was of clear mind and pure heart. And now feels a little hitchy because the bishop just asked me to do something that wasn't on my timetable. He didn't ask me, is this a good time? He said, here's what I need you to do now. And here's where this kind of freedom comes in. Because that caught me off guard, because that's going to involve a lot of loss and sorrow, leaving my family, because of all that, does that mean I abandon my earlier commitment? When I was born to do this, and I figured that out with God's grace at some point along the way, am I now, because it gets hard, not going to do that any longer? Going to give up the calling that I have? I mean, if I were going to do that, you never would have met me anyway, because I would still be in Oneonta. Leaving there was very painful. I would still be in Oneonta. It's a faith decision to live freely, and it's not easy. And that's why I think we Americans have a strong sense that freedom isn't free. You've heard that before. Freedom isn't free. It never is. If you think about our own national freedom, it took a revolution to get free. And then it took a civil war for us to keep citizens free so that they would not be enslaved. We have had to work so hard for our freedom, and it's a constant battle. It isn't free. And the same thing is true with our inner freedom. Am I a slave to my moods? Am I addicted to the sugar high of other people's approval? It's not an easy thing, but it's what we're called to do. Freedom means I know what God is calling me to do, and I'm not going to let anything take me off that path. That is true freedom. Happy Independence Day.